Hello. Yes, we are live. I'm going to be doing a discussion about. Just waiting for my guest.
Hello, good evening. Sam.
Hi. How are you? How are you feeling?
I'm rolling with the waves, but I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, thank you. Yes.
Oh, that's good. Um, so what would you like to ask me, and how would you like me to start?
So I'd love to ask you then. So how did the sort of the SEN law thing and special educational needs that whole kind of spectrum of things interest you, and what are your plans for sort of incorporating that into education?
Um, Basically, it starts from me currently being out of education. I've been out of education from 2017, and I found that there's been significant number of, you could say, shortfalls within the education and the funding. And within the funding system, there's a number of children and young students that don't get diagnosed with dyslexia and go unknown. Within this stigma of being undiagnosed with dyslexia, and especially you could say the support not being funded, even with the teachers and the factors of the facilities. It's a factor that's been continuing for several years, and it's a thing that I found that needs improving and needs urgent reform. I feel that we need qualified teachers. I feel that we also need investment in probably having SEN and neurodiversity involved within the education system and within the school and college and university, probably even as a qualification as well for like upcoming teachers that are able to understand our way of learning and also our way of understanding in, you could say, learning like a lesson in a different way to a normal student. I've also found that there's a factor that within my SEN law, there's a number of youth students that are sofa surfing, and I've experienced this for myself because the SEN department did not deliver in me being in education. And I found that there's a kind of, you could say, it's unknown, and it's a factor that still goes on in the United Kingdom, especially. And I found that it needs to be addressed. There's a post that I did recently that says about, I think, 100,000 or some around about that number of young students that are homeless. And yeah, I feel that it's a time for change. It's a time to also bring it to government and also
Mm.
to make acknowledge make acknowledge for employees as well in the working environment. So that's the main plan about the Claudes SEN law. It's appreciated if anybody can also support. I appreciate the ones that have signed it, and I look forward to making the change and to making the government acknowledge the changes that we need, and also in the factor of students that are going back to school. However, it's a factor that you hope that they go back in the factor of having the support, but not being overworked. For example, they're thinking of having summer schools for them, but they already have like a lot of work that they go through already. And this is about the support and making acknowledgement for the seriousness of the you could say non-acknowledgement and disconnected behaviour to education.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think I've got dyspraxia,
Mm.
and I had no knowledge of this in school. It was difficult. I mean, my parents thought that I showed, signs of potentially autism, and that kind of thing, at a young age, maybe around 8, 9 years old. But there was no knowledge of how we could get a proper assessment within school, or whether to. I mean, in the end, it was an educational psychologist in my house came to the house and did the test for dyspraxia, and I was described as being 100%. I have dyspraxia, and I have some traits of autism as well. But I think the support, and I think overall, I think I've always said that. I mean, I think dyslexia again is another one that I think that it almost becomes to a point where people are almost content with, oh, everything's fine for, because I think dyspraxia, especially, I think for me, in college, I found out. So I was at the point where I was in college, and that was the first point I'd had dyspraxia. So I didn't really feel that I was well understood by my classmates. I didn't really feel I was understood that much by teachers.
Yeah.
But and I think in terms of even the learning support I would say that there was one learning support assistant that I clicked with. She was amazing, and she understood me on a human level, but also sort of like on a level that she understood it over time what my needs were and how she could go about best meeting those needs. And I think that the problem is that there's no and one of my learning support assistants in classes, she'd sometimes bring a colouring book, because she would like sit there and do colouring and stuff, and because she didn't really know what she could do to actually help me, and I was kind of felt a bit useless, because it was like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't think the teacher knows how to help me, and they should be the first port of call. They should know how to support me as a person, and then sort of So it's been like a difficult journey, and I think that university wouldn't have been. I mean, I went to have a look around university, but I think once reality hit for me, I thought, university level education is not something that appeals to me. I'm happy to do the last qualification I did was at college, and I got my 90 credit BTEC diploma in music. And I think if it's something that I enjoy, I mean, I fell out of love with music in the end, but if it's something that I enjoy and I'm committed, and I'll always show commitment and dedication once I find something that clicks. And that is, I think, it's definitely important that we get, because it's a point of actually feeling like we're getting somewhere. We see a vision, because I don't really see much of a vision. I just see sort of standing still and almost an acceptance that, well, we can't do more, but we have to do more.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I fully agree, because basically, like, for me to be out of education after going through an 8 years, you could say 8 years court, you could say 8 years of being out of education already, when it was coming to my secondary. And I could say that even I've been in education, I could say that I've been more in a court environment than being in education, because it's always been that factor of having a court hearing that's about a right placement that's going to accommodate my needs, deliver for me. And I found particularly, even, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, in the fact of that Brexit is an important factor in that. Under Europe, I found that the courts are more corrupt. You found that the local authorities are able to make the courts have their kind of way of trying to win and trying to get it, that they could make it become a local offer than an actual placement that would accommodate for that young student or child. And then they realise that that young student or child goes to that placement that the local authority requires. However, it may not deliver in the needs of making that young adult or young student or child be able to flourish and do well, because they've either had a PA system, or either you could say assignment kind of thing, where they have a person who does like how would I explain? It's like their assessment. And of course, it'd be in favour of the local authority, other than the actual development of that young child or young adult. and you found that they either pay them off and it's a factor that continues and nothing really is benefiting for that young child or young student. And yeah, I fully agree that I think even that stigma is really quite bad in the fact of that you got all these young students that have got potentials and dreams that they should be able to achieve. However, they are out of education and they always have to go through to these court hearings to basically be accommodated for a right placement, but it ends up being for the local authority.
Okay.
That's been a big issue as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of so the other side of things as well, then the like employment side,
Mm.
what sort of things are you looking at and sort of following up in terms of employment and changing sort of how or sort of the rules and regulations about employment and supporting employment for
I
people with
think
disabilities?
I think there needs to be an understanding of the right resources, right facilities, and basically you could have employees that understand the needs and requirements that a neurodiversity employee requires, and also in methods like you could say broken down reputation, also having programs that are within like their laptop or having facilities that are funded for them that they are able to understand the taking the information, because it's an issue that for us as neurodiversity students or young adults, we need to be given the information in the broken down version, or either in a way that we can kind of understand it because of how our brain works, and also in the factor of being able to have resources that will be able to support us. So, like you could say, a voice program that would be able to say it instead of you being able to read it out, or either if you want to read it out, you could have it on colored piece of paper or some sort of resources. And at the moment, I'm aware that those resources are not in place in uh, certain work environments, and it's a factor that is really required and urgently needed. I feel that it needs to be the same for also the schools, and yeah, I think there needs to be more of a level of understanding and equal opportunities for us neurodiversity. And not all of us may want to go to uni, but that understanding that with uni, I think they should continue, because I heard that they didn't continue the program where if you go to uni, you won't be provided a laptop or either an audio cam. When I went to uni through the process, they didn't provide me my DLD, disability living allowance. Student finance came through, but my disability living allowance did not come through. And then this is where I'm in the situation I am, because first and foremost, they thought I was going to go on a course, but I didn't have the qualifications. And I knew I was going to still continue in further education, then higher education. And this is the fact that I've got an offer, but still now they think that it'd be applicable for me to study at home. However, studying at home may not work for everybody. It's so important for us to have that one-to-one. And of course, speaking to the working environment, it probably be important to have those one-to-ones, have a, you could say, assistant if you need any help, because it can be full on, of course, in a working environment, and also the same for the school environment and college and universities. So I think it's a factor of them all those different sectors to understand that they need those you could say specific facilities in place for them.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I mean, to be honest, I think from my experience, I would say that in my previous workplace that there were certain individuals that understood me to a good level, but
Mm,
then I think I would say that the people that needed to understand me didn't, and
mm,
I think like that in the end, that spelled the end of my time, and I think, I mean, I had to. I mean, it was sort of a two-way street for me at the end. I left my job in March last year because of COVID, really, and family circumstances, like proving with COVID as well.
sorry to hear that.
So I sort of, but the other reason was my mental health at that point also
Mm.
was not very good because of not being understood. So it was really two reasons why I left. And I think it's important to feel like, you know, you find a place. I mean, I'm lucky enough now to I'm sort of being eased into finding what my journey is really, and I'm working sort of doing some part-time work for an organisation um, called Enrich, and they are fantastic. Um, they support people with all kinds of different disabilities, and they are helping adults to just live an independent life and to choose the way that they want to do that.
Mm.
And so I'm sort of writing some articles for them, um, and sort of increasing the awareness about, you know, the organisation. I want
Mm.
to help them to become a nationally known organisation because at the moment, I mean, my area, Leicestershire,
Yeah.
and they also provide support in Derbyshire and Oxfordshire.
Mm.
So what the aim and the goal for the organisation to do is to go and be recognised on a national scale, and for people all over the country to get the support they need and to meet people and to also just not feel isolated. I think
Of course.
what COVID has done, I think a lot is made people feel isolated.
Yes.
And I've been
And
very fortunate. So
mm.
to meet people via, they do Zoom calls, sort of a few times a week, and I'm sort of, you know, really grateful to have all these opportunities to connect with the amazing people.
Yeah. I think you got a wonderful angle from that point of view as well, because I think it's very important that even for myself as well as a campaigner for this Claude SEN law, it's I think this pandemic has made big differences in the factor, of course, where we've had to rely on social media. We've had to rely, and I really appreciate Instagram and Facebook for that, because it's been able for me to be put the platform on there and be able to spread the word and connect with people. Because at the moment with the pandemic, it's kind of made issues where you're not able to kind of talk to people or able to campaign and talk to them face to face and ask what are the issues that they find difficult, what do they think that they could contribute for me to kind of put part of the SEN law. And that's where I thank Instagram and Facebook, because it's been able for me to connect and ask them what they would like to be implemented, and where the kind of, you could say, the shortfalls and the fact of where it needs to be improved and what needs to be kind of from their views, from the people point of view. And I found that that's been really helpful. So I do believe that social media has its benefits, and I think that even in the factor of how I could say, you know, those small organizations as well, could it able for them to have a voice, the ones that you've mentioned. And it's important that we all come together in that point of view, but being connected other than like being together. Because what I find is that when I mean being together, you can see that the government, there is a factor where they're trying to make certain things be silent. And it's important for us to be connected, that we are able to make the government acknowledge that these are the things that we want improved. With the NHS, I think it's the fact of that, you know, services in that area could be improved much more, but it seemed like they're not being improved. And you think that, you know, God bless Tom, Captain Tom, after what he did, you would have thought his money would have made improvements within the NHS. And even for like the factor of small charities within the school free meal system, I think they're putting the children back into the schools, but they're not being reliable for their free school meals. I'm aware of some people who've had factors where their vouchers don't even work. And yeah, it's important that basically these us as campaigners are heard, and it's important that we're able to connect and make these improvements.
I think it's incredibly important, and I think
Mm.
I'm not sure if you see. So he was on Dr. Alex George.
Yeah.
He's been appointed as the mental health ambassador, I think.
Mm.
And
Yes.
what I would love to see is, and what I'd love to gain knowledge of is is he having, like, every week or every month, or is he having regular discussions with the Prime Minister and other, like, politicians about how, as a country, as a whole, whatever side of the fence you sit on, like, are we as a country doing more to actually increase awareness about mental health issues and
Of
disabilities?
course.
And a lot of the time they can link. I mean, for me, I've met and spoke to a lot of people with dyspraxia and some with dyslexia and autism, and they feel like there's a lot of linking mental health issues that come about with it as well,
Yes.
whether it's anxiety or depression or anything like this. And I think that with Dr. Alex George, I really hope that he, like, has a lot of ideas that he can speak to and use, like, his platform to speak to the Prime Minister and get some more sort of ideas and well, just much better care within, you know, healthcare services. Because I do
Very
think
much
that
so.
with the disability side of things, that people have to wait, and some people have to sort of spend hundreds or however much money on going privately to find. And people might be lucky enough to do that, but I think
Mm.
people should be able to identify and use services from the NHS and whatever to actually get quick support. Because the
Yes.
problem that I always have is that we always seem to have to wait until someone gets to a crisis point. We never sort of deal with an issue before it gets to its worst part, and that's, like, really, really sad to me, and
Or
something that
the
I
or
think
the or
really is important
pardon
to change.
pardon, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think also, as you said, it's that factor, or the other factor is that they do things backwards, unfortunately. Where, for example, they've put in electric cars, but they've thought to do the charging points after they've done the electric cars when they could
Mm,
have done the charging points before. And yeah, I
mm,
fully agree. And I feel that in the factor, of course, with the number of young students that are out of education, and also in the factor that for them to even go back and feel that they have to be separated in a bubble, I think those factors are going to kind of affect them because they're not able to kind of socialize, but also the factor that the education and the system is still kind of the same. And this is why I think, yeah, it would be very important to have those discussions. And I've heard that, like, services like CAMS, some people haven't found it that beneficial, but having like some independent and proper kind of services that are funded and would be able to help for those young students, definitely. I think the
mm.
local authority as well should be watched over. At the moment, there's no one to watch over them when they are dealing with students' plans, because on the basis that, for example, I found that some student plans, they've been either changed or they either been adapted without the student's consent. For example, with my one, the whole of my Part F in the EHCP plan was adapted, and that's where I was in a situation where my whole DLD was stripped away from me. So I think that's a factor that needs to be acknowledged as well within the Claudes SEN law, is that I think we require a body of, like, you could say, parents who have neurodiversity young students and children who understand basically their needs, and also for the parents to be heard more and the students to be listened more in that factor, because at the moment our voices are not being heard within that area, and the fact of that they need to be watched because they do a lot of unlawful things, unfortunately, and they kind of disconnect from the actual issues that they could deliver and make the child and young adult do well. And this is the thing, it's not just going to be the child that's going to benefit, it's not just going to be the young person that benefits, it's also going to be them, as the factor that they fund the money. And this is where I found that it's like they always want to derail the student or young adult's journey, and that's a mental health within it as well. And that's an issue that basically kind of goes underneath the carpet, because when you contact Department of Education or you contact Ofsted, they say talk to the local authority. But when the local authority is the issue, what do you do? So I find that I think there should be a board of parents and people that are watching over them, and also in the fact that the courts, they need to be able to, you could say, have a neutral mind and not be sold and paid off that the student doesn't benefit. And
Mm.
yeah, there's factors within the law that I think that should be acknowledged, and I hope that basically people will support, and it will be much appreciated. And yeah, it would be good to acknowledge and make um, more awareness for neurodiversity, as it's Neurodiversity Week coming up in March, as I'm aware. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So are there also changes to, I mean, I'm fully aware of like I think the curriculum. I think that I've always sort of thought that I was saying this to my friend this morning that
Mm,
we have a curriculum that, I mean, when it gets to GCSE stage, that we are having to do exams based on sort of trying to answer a question like why are you know the relationships between characters in a book or something, or even the relationships not between characters. They might be, the color of the curtains in a room or something. And
mm,
I think that there has to be, quite a lot of things adapted in. I mean, I think in some situations there are some great things that are done, like fairs at schools. So they might do um, that, like even primary school children might learn skills like counting money and sort of working out change and practical skills. Because I do think that the practicality of the curriculum has got to be a lot more.
yeah.
And I think the a subject like English and having to sort of read old novels and books to sort of work out what the hidden meaning of things is.
Mm,
It's not really sort of very practical. I don't think. So
no,
would you
really.
what sort of adaptations would you want to make to the curriculum to in order for SEN children and young adults to get the best out of it?
I think they should make it more adaptable, and this is where the resources that would help the student. And I think, of course, where they need to kind of look at resources. I think, like some of the programs that have been on, there was a Cara Toynton program that was called "Don't Call Me Stupid," and that was really useful. That explained exactly about for people who don't know neurodiversity, it broke it down and made an understanding of what students are um, interested in learning, and also in the factor of how the resources. So like you have I think you have like a thing called a squeegee board for like if you have writing issues, or if you have like kind of OT and all those factors. Very important. Speech and language is a very important factor if you have speech problems, but also I think factors where you could, like art is a great resource. And in English, I think because it can be high powering sometimes, if they know that they have ways of kind of breaking it down, but also making it where it's more kind of suitable, where you're not having like all of the children not being confused, of course. So I think those factors, but this is where the funding comes in, and unfortunately, there's been no funding in that factor. And I found that over the time, it's like they've stretched it into other areas. For example, the pandemic, and this is where it's like it's not been prioritized rightly, and it could be prioritized a bit more better. Then we are able to kind of have the resources and be able to implement these things to make it more accommodating for neurodiversity. I feel that the programs, like, of course, there's the amount of neurodiversity students that get excluded because the teachers don't really understand the student, and they don't really kind of, you could say, when they might be finding it difficult, but they're not going to be honest to kind of tell the teachers that they're finding it difficult. But these are the ways that if they understand how to teach the student, they won't find that they have to exclude them. And it's all about inclusion than exclusion. And I think also the fact of that our mindset and our thinking is like an ocean. I would say it was like space, but the factor is the government knows more about space than the ocean. So I'll say that we
Mm.
kind of have a mindset where it's quite fluidity, and it's the fact that we learn in a different way. And I think probably that's probably been a bit of a threat in the fact that that's why we don't seem to be educated or funded or backed in that issue, because if we are thinking in a different mindset. It's not the mindset of what you could say systematic brain or like other students are, but it's quite enhancing because, like, for example, I had a student who was in my school. She knew history, she loved history, and there is certain students that love a particular topic and they will know, like, for example, she knew all the years, she knew Henry VIII, she knew all the Edwardian, and there is particular subjects that we will love, and there is things that you could say that we were made to do well in. And I think it's all about this flourishing and nurturing that blossom of that young student and what their favorite topic is. And once they find that and understand that, that's how they are able to flourish and do well. So that's what my answer would be.
Absolutely. I think that, like, one of my biggest things is really that in school, I think that once you get to a certain age, you can kind of, I would think that teachers could identify the strengths within their students. And I think that for me, I would kind of think that, I mean, I've gone down the route of seeing a careers coach. I had, I think, 6 sessions and, again, paid, multiple, like, quite a bit of money to see this career coach. And yeah, in a school, you could sort of, your teacher could at least sort of think that, I can identify via your work in this topic or something. You seem to have a really good knowledge in this department.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, to me, I've become sort of, I have the knowledge now that I'm sort of, my area of sort of more strength is to do with sort of analyzing data, statistics, and all these types of things I'm quite interested in. So like in particular in sport and looking at different databases of sports players and finding sort of which players I would want to pick for teams and such. But I feel like in a school scenario that maybe a teacher should be able to identify strengths in their students and sort of guide them on that journey. That, because for me, once I finished my GCSEs, I was like, what next? Like, what do I do now? I mean, I don't, I'm 16 going on 17. I mean, I know that there are people who, have somehow find, they find work at, I mean, one of my friends had, work in a restaurant at the age of 15, but, for me, that's not feasible. But finding work in something that, at the time, I didn't really have any knowledge of what I was good at. I was kind of, you're sort of measured based on exams, if you like. You're measured on, you're either great at passing exams or you're not. And then, there's sort of no alternative to think, well, you've clearly got some really good strengths. And I would sort of then say, you could take this route to getting maybe in 5 years' time, your goal is to find some part-time employment in this sector. And the problem is that there's no route forward. I think post 16, it's kind of, if you don't pass your GCSEs,
would you find that there's not enough teacher assistants? And would you find that because as you said that there was one teacher assistant that understood you and she was able to support, is that right?
Yeah, I would say in college. I think in school, because I mean, in school it wasn't apparent I had dyspraxia at that point, but I still had some sort of classroom support in certain lessons. Like I had it in every lesson in English and some in science. English was better because it was more sort of, it was evident that, I was one person in the class who, it was more the processing of information. For me with dyspraxia, it was more the processing speed. And so I had support to sort of like analyze a text and to highlight things that might have been important. And I felt that, she was a good teaching assistant. But I think that in other scenarios, in other lessons, I think it also class size is a really determining factor. I think in some classes,
it's better when you find the small classes, like classes of 7, and you were able to kind of understand it more. I would say exactly the same because I've struggled. I've got dyslexia and dyspraxic, and I've got a thing where I had epilepsy mismanaged. But yeah, I find that it's hard to kind of intake information. My
Mm.
teacher, my teacher in college, he put it in like colored blocks, and it was more it was more easier for me to take in the information. And I just think that simple methods like that, it makes such a difference. Because I do love learning and I love to kind of like, I'm hungry for information, but it's just the way of how it's given to me. And of course,
Mm.
sometimes with my short-term memory, it may need to be repetized to me, but it makes such a difference. And that makes less on my anxiety because I'm not as panicked when it comes to an assignment, and it simplifies it for me. And even for like a program with a laptop, even though I found that at my college it wasn't provided for me, in the fact that I had to give it back when within my you could say my independent psychiatrist report, it was told that it was supposed to be provided for me. But of course, within the funding issues, this is where I had to give it back. And this is where I found that through my own experiences, this is why we need the Claudes SEN law. And I think it will make the difference of what students are finding difficult or what they think that are the shortfalls to the issues within the education sector. And I think they more probably find it in uni and, of course, sometimes in college because they don't seem to understand it. And there is kind of a factor where they have so much to think about, like, for example, uni, where they got to think about, the kind of their own, you could say their own responsibilities, and also within their own kind of financial uh, so like, the accommodation, the tuition fees and all those stuff. And I don't think they're supported as much. I think it was quite interesting because I heard in question time, they were saying, oh, should we prioritize for education or should we also prioritize for students having the freedom of speech? I think both things are very important. For the
Mm.
students to have freedom of speech is important because if the teachers and if the actual placement don't know what the students' issues are, how are they going to be able to understand what they need to improve? So I think both things are important, and all of the education sectors should have the same you could say level of understanding in what they require, because it doesn't mean that you just forget about the uni students and think about the other students and think about the priority of education, when both things are very important. We understand that everybody's been out of education, but you also have to wonder where has the evidence been and also where are the findings for this pandemic. Because I found that it's kind of convenient in the fact that the government has not been able to have to pay for certain sectors that are very important. Where's the voice for the economic? I found that, you get more medical scientists, advisors than people that are coming from from an economic side or from an actual business head side, and also from the education. And I just think it's appalling that we have to watch things like that and not see the balance in those sectors that are also important. Hospitality,
Mm.
they should also probably have a minister for that. They don't seem to
Mm.
at the moment. And yeah, it seems like it comes for us young people to have to come up with the ideas to support and make the government understand what we require, because these adults unfortunately don't seem to have the understanding or idea. All they're thinking about is the money and the kind of factor of saving and cut costing. That's
Mm.
been a big issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that exactly like the way that you're thinking, and to have multiple sort of different topics that have to be discussed in Parliament, because I do think that it sort of just becomes so simplistic, and it
Yeah,
becomes sort of, that I know that there's different ideas within different parties, that some might be big government, some might be sort of smaller. Um, and I mean, even if they have smaller numbers, it's about sort of like covering sort of wider bases,
yeah,
sort of, within a topic. I mean, there are many different kind of levels that they can sort of go to increase that level of awareness and understanding. And I think that at the moment, And as you say, things are so kind of standstill, and it does become difficult with they don't seem to allow or have so many rooms for different voices. And I think that
Mm.
I mean, when it's questions, prime minister's questions, whatever, they sort of have, they don't have that many voices that speak. I don't think. I mean, they speak about kind of, maybe the obvious things, but they don't wander out of anything outside of the obvious,
No,
really, to me.
and sorry to interrupt, but to even add on, I think the even within the parties, it's a shame that we got this kind of red blue, red blue. You got
Mm,
other small parties that don't even seem to have a look in or get the seats to be able to be in Parliament. And it's always been that kind of way what they try to portray in on the media when other people are thinking of the other parties, but it doesn't really get a look in. And that's what we've always had. We've always had this Conservative Labour. I got an email from the chair of the Conservative saying to me the policies that they got for SEN, but some of it sounds good, but the fact is the action, and it's all words, and it doesn't seem to be
mm,
enough action. And I find that basically it's what kind of is within the kind of, you could say, box that is convenient for the Conservative. Because within what I got sent, I found that it didn't really speak on the areas that I'm looking to address. And there needs to be more of kind of, you could say, areas that need to be addressed. But they say that they are looking and they're thinking of putting these policies in. However, it's not going to address the issues in, for example, making neurodiversity and also putting in funding and support for those specific needs that we require and what many young students and young adults require as well. And I think it's quite something that even when you hit to the age of 18, that's when they start asking you, what are you doing? But if there's a factor when the SEN department of the local authority have, you could say, not delivered in their areas and caused the problem that you are out of education unelected, the students shouldn't have to be stressed or have mental issues to be worried that because their education not being funded, feel that they have to contribute or feel they have to contribute to bills or rent stuff when they're supposed to be educated. And these are the issues that seem to kind of continue and be happening. And yeah, I think there needs to be an understanding, and I think there needs to be a factor that if there's a student that's out of education when they're 18, they are able to be you could say the area is supposed to be investigated in the fact of what's really happened, why the local authority hasn't done their job, why they haven't made sure that they're in the placement, and the factor of listening to the parents. And also within the EHCP plan, it's quite interesting how David Cameron, he made sure that he put the social workers within the education when education is education. However, he did that smartly to try and make that they don't have to pay for the placement or education placement. So it moves on the responsibilities to someone else as what they usually seem to do. And yeah, I think those factors where, we separate education from that and the factor of making it about education and making the parents be able to be heard, students be able to be listened, and have more kind of environments that are more inclusive to neurodiversity and also make a day of it, like Neurodiversity Week. So
yeah,
yeah, I think it would be good.
absolutely. And I think that Neurodiversity Week as well is a great opportunity to discuss these things more as well,
Mm,
and to sort of. And I really hope that, I mean, there's some things I've wrote down. I've got like a calendar of the awareness days and awareness weeks and things. And it's kind of, it always occurs to me that, do they ever speak about these things on the news? Like,
yes,
I'm always, I don't think
very true.
I've sort of become, scared of watching the news at this point. I sort of don't see, because there might be some things that are very important, and yet all they ever speak about is the same things. Or,
Yeah.
again, why do we need to know? I mean, they did a big thing for when Joe Biden was elected and things. I don't understand
Mm.
why, with what we have going on right now, why do we have to show all of the sort of clips and stuff from Joe Biden's
Of
election?
course.
You
And
know,
it's
it's
nothing to do with us in the factor. I understand. I fully understand because I think that basically there's situations and matters that are supposed to be reported in the UK and they don't really report it. I fully agree in that point of view because we don't live in America and these issues like education is very important to report. Neurodiversity. There's also I think it's Purple Day that
yeah,
acknowledges
Purple Day.
epilepsy. And
Mm,
also today, I'm aware that I think it's called Rare Disease Day to
mm,
people who have disease. So yeah, it's a shame, but this is how the media they don't seem to analyze. That's another thing that I've worked out. They're not analyzing at the moment as what was told by another journalist. I think Andrew Marr or Andrew Neil. He said that
mm,
it's important for them to analyze, and of course they can report about things in the UK, but it doesn't seem to be of their interest, and I think that should change, and it should be a factor that they can report things like that. But it is important, and
mm,
people should have a level of understanding of what these topics are, and they should also know that they are important topics and important factors to be taken care of.
mm. And I think when it comes round to it as well,
Mm.
Neurodiversity Week, and I think it's great to actually share as well the many positive stories that are out there because I think that people, I think in the media, I mean I don't really know the ins and outs of it, but I would guess that they would rather find another sort of slant of it rather than looking at things always sort of in a positive light. That
Yeah,
I think it's sometimes about finding the really positive stories, like
yeah,
finding stories of people who have sort of, really shone a light on, raising awareness about their disability or, mental health and things like that. And maybe just sort of, it gives a glimpse into, what we want to see in the future and for everybody who relates to us and to
yeah,
people that we want to have those exact same chances. Because I actually had once, so I was actually put forward, and this is the problem with job centres that we can discuss as well. That
mm,
I felt I was forced into attending like a job interview at a call centre, and I knew as soon as I was put forward for this that it's not a strength of mine. It's not an environment that I feel any sort of comfort in,
mm,
and I was sort of thrown into this. I was not told prior to the event, and clarity for me, having dyspraxia, is very important in knowing in advance what I'm going to be doing. They
yes,
had they had a role playing activity, and so I had to sort of pretend that I was answering a call from someone at a call center, and I didn't know what to say. I was kind of trembling and very anxious, and I was told that I hadn't passed the role play, and I think there were five other candidates, and they'd all passed on that stage, and I was the only one to leave at that point, and I walked home like really upset and thinking, well, it wasn't my choice to be here. I knew
mm,
that it wasn't an environment that suits my strengths.
yeah,
And the job centre again are just looking to actually say, oh, we got someone into a job. It might not be something that they actually feel they're good at, but we take some credit because we got someone into employment. And I think that I actually I had another interview at a as well, and I met an advisor at the job centre that I'd never met before, so I was quite nervous, and my sort of eye contact problem, was sort of showing at that point. But she discriminated me by saying that I can sort of guess that the reason you didn't get this job was because you can't make eye contact with anybody. And so this hurt me very much, and that it made me
mm,
feel like, well, maybe I might never, be successful in future environments, in interviews, and because I feel quite anxious in making eye contact. Um, and in fact, the only reason I didn't get the job was because of I didn't at that moment I didn't have my food hygiene certificate passed. So that was in the interview they said I did really well. I had a lot of knowledge about the company
Yeah.
and I was able to answer a lot of questions. So the job center and the people there just weren't helpful. And I think that's also something that has to be
Looked at.
really sort of heavily addressed as well.
Of course, I feel that there is people who don't really have the level of understanding. I think there's a wonderful charity, and that's why I even think it's brilliant that I think it's called the Sunflower, and it addresses with hidden disabilities, and it makes aware of when you have hidden disabilities and the factor of, I think they even do like role kind of prepare people for that environment. And I feel that, of course, I think the important understanding is, when I was saying before, I think when you hit the age of 18, or even when you're at that age, if you feel not to go into the work environment and you want to wish to study, I think we should be allowed to have that opportunity to be able to study. Because, like for myself, I would like to be able to study, that I can have those other doors open to me and be able to get into my dream career or be able to go to uni. And yeah, I feel that there needs to be more of a kind of understanding, more of an acknowledgement in the factor of people who are able to, you could say, put support in or be able to prepare you for role plays. And those factors are not acknowledged at the moment. So yes, I feel that that's a thing that's why I said that I would like to reform the work environment and also the education, because if it all starts from that area, if we don't have these kind of level of understanding in the fact of preparing us neurodiversity to make us not feel that it's going to be more of a kind of scary you could say experience, and that we are better, more prepared, and that people don't discriminate. That's an important thing. I think it's important that work working environments have a good manifesto of of a scheme that doesn't discriminate, and it opens for all types of, you could say, disability, all types of students, all types of young adults. So I think those things need to be looked at because the system is very old. It's not updated to what it could be. And even I heard on that ad that not enough supermarkets even have bathrooms. We're supposed to be living in the 21st century, and it doesn't have enough bathrooms. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that basically need to be implemented and also need to be looked over and reviewed, and even just have funding. That's the main big issue, and this is where we've been told that Brexit has been done. However, it's not been done in the right way, and this is why it doesn't feel like it's Brexit, because basically what really Boris could have done and should have and could have done is basically no deal. That was really the preparation, even though there was scaremongering, publicans and businesses that, oh, no deal's going to be detrimental. However, there was businesses that were prepared for no deal, and it's an important factor, because if we could have that, this is how other sectors would be able to have a pot of money and be able to be funded in a better way. Because at the moment, Britain sends a lot of money over to Europe. There's certain things that we are not really, you could say, told by the government. And there's a lot of things that they don't really tell us. For example, in David Cameron's era, there was a lot of things that he did underneath the quiet and not informed the publicans about. And those money that he basically was sending to other places basically could have gone into education and could have funded for the students. However, we hear that, I think it was on Newsnight, I heard that they paid money for a new satellite. And you thinking you've gone to an auction to pay money for a satellite, but what's happened to education? So yeah, and this is why I really put my hats up to those campaigners that make the change and make the voice heard, that these sectors, for example, like my situation with education and the Claudes SEN law in reforming the UK education, is to make that change and ask for funding and understanding and good resources that can support young students and young adults. So yes, I think there needs to be more of an up-to-date review, more of an up-to-date understanding, and better prepare our students and young adults. Teachers don't even get paid enough as well. You find that they're always stretched. And this is the thing, it's like you could say they're giving them, it's almost like modern day slavery. They think they could basically work them really hard and not give them the rewards that they need in their teaching, and also give them the qualifications that they should have as well, in understanding how to better prepare their lessons and better to prepare their young future minds.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's so many ways that we can sort of, we have these ideas that we can improve things so much, and it's important to sort of, keep that going, and to sort of get people to sort of, to use their voice, really, to sort of speak about things on a personal level. And I think that, I mean, it would be so nice to see, I mean, those who are in power, I mean, like the Prime Minister or whoever, I mean, at the moment, we see that every week or every whatever, we see press conferences. We'd never see, if it wasn't for COVID, we would never ever see, I don't think, any press conferences. We just sort of see glimpses of the Prime Minister's questions. You can find, I think, the whole thing on YouTube. I mean, if people want to find, but then, we never sort of hear about, the sort of real issues and stuff. There was never any press conferences about, and I think also the honesty and integrity sort of the side of things, that, we don't get the honest truth and the integrity, and, being told the word sorry for, if someone makes a mistake.
Yeah.
I can totally get on board with mistakes, absolutely fine. But then if things, if they tell a lie, or they sort of tell multiple lies and make a lot of errors, there's no kind of accountability, and there's no actual kind of like standing up and saying, I'm sorry as your Prime Minister or whatever, or as your people in this department, we've not delivered, and we will either, step up to the task, or we will. I mean, to be honest, either way, there will be people who will think people to be cowardly if they would leave their job and not be strong enough.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it's the best some people can do. I mean, Matt Hancock, and there'll be other people too that just, that they're in a sort of role, Gavin Williamson, and yet, they won't resign, because they'll just keep coming out with the same lines, which are just completely nothing. They're just bottomless lines that have nothing to them at all.
Yeah. And I think, and I totally agree. And you just wonder, because this is the thing, is there's a big number of people that want him to resign, and also really want him to apologize, because of course, even with the A-levels, it was ridiculous. And I think, this is the thing, is that it's important, because I even heard at one point, I think they were thinking of getting rid of the GCSEs or A-levels, but they're an important factor. And I feel that, education is important, but we need a qualified understanding of people, because they don't really understand an everyday person, and that is the issue. They have a high elite education, high elite kind of experience of life, but they don't really understand what everyday people require. And this has been a factor that's gone on for some time now, and I just feel that the Claudes SEN law will make the changes that students and young adults will require and need. And it was really much appreciated of the people who have supported. And yeah, you can find the link in my bio, and you can all support, and you can also find my book as well on my page that I wrote about my journey, and also about my experience as education and what I would like to change in the old education system and make it more accommodating for neurodiversity. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me as well.
You're very welcome. It's been a fantastic discussion tonight. I've very much enjoyed it.
Likewise, thank you. And it was really enhancing to hear your story and your experience as well. And yeah, it's I think it's brilliant when people like you and me work together, and many other people who come from the background of neurodiversity, and all the charities. Feel free to contact me, and also give your experiences and stories. Would be much appreciated, and your support. And thank you for the ones that have supported so far. And yeah, if you've got any useful information, feel free to DM me. And thank you, Sam, as well.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great evening yourself as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.